Okay, and we have thanks everyone for joining us. Today is July 9th, and we are on our weekly Jupyter Frontends community call, or sorry, Jupyter Frontends call. And today I'm going to paste the agenda once more for those of you who may have not seen it yet. We can go over to the items in the agenda. Um, it looks like sorry, you're in the wrong section. Okay, we have a few items. First up on the agenda is Mike. Oh, I think you muted Mike. Oh, um,
Sorry, I don't know. Okay,
mm,
you should hear me now.
yes.
Hi. Okay. Hi. So I will start by mentioning a change to the security reporting email address that I requested and made on the GitHub slash Jupyter.org website with uh, assistance from the EC that relates to the old security@ipython.org email no longer being reliable. And as a follow-up to that, we would want to update the link in the security.md. So I opened a pull request which does that in the community repo for JupyterLab org, which is .github. And I see that Jason just approved it, but I wanted to spread awareness of this because there might be many more places where there is manually added security.md. We can later search for that systematically, but if you already know that some place references the old email address, it would be good if we could transition. It's not that the old email address is fully non-functional. I understand that some of the emails still get through, but it's just not reliable anymore. So it would be preferable if we got that updated. And the other topic is related to Jupyter messaging protocol and the interfaces that we have in JupyterLab for it. This stems from my attempt to contribute to Jupyter Lite, where the interrupt button currently doesn't work. And uh, we have an implementation for like a just stopping after the next execution. So if we interrupt cell number 2, cell number 3 will not be executed, but cell number 2 will not be interrupted yet, but there is a known idea how we can implement that for kernels running in the browser. Now, because of the difference in architecture, I thought that it might make sense to make use of a command or request that was added in Jupyter Messaging Protocol version 5.3, which is interrupt request, interrupt reply. That has been added 8 years ago, but it hasn't been added to Jupyter Lab codebase, probably in part because Jupyter Lab doesn't use that message at all. Instead, what it does is it calls an API endpoint for Jupyter Server, which then uses the system interrupt, which manifests as keyboard interrupt when using Python kernel. So my question here, sorry, and the other reason is that the version of the protocol in the JupyterLab codebase is hard-coded to 5.2. I do not have historical context on why it was chosen, because I think while JupyterLab is maybe not old, but has been around for a while, I think the protocol version 5.3 was already there. So if anyone recalls any potential reason to not use the newer version by default, that would be useful. Otherwise, I think we could add this message to the types, and then JupyterLab could choose to use that interruption mechanism. And technically, if we want to support the newer protocol version, we should already look at the kernel spec. And if kernel spec advertises that it wants to use the interrupt request, we should be emitting it instead of calling the server API. So this is the pull request that I've linked for review if anyone is interested. But there is a couple other differences compared to the spec when I was looking at implementation, so that in JupyterLab we can return the exact messages as the frontend expects. And some of these are related to a deprecated aborted status. And that is a bit of a funny topic because the specification mentions both abort and aborted. I'm not sure if this is the right audience to discuss what we should do here, but it looks like there was a typo when the protocol was written, and on this issue in Jupyter client, Min, who probably has the best recollection because he wrote the pull request which deprecated one of these statuses, mentions that most likely that was just a typo, but now we have like two values and we need to decide what should we use in the protocol, what makes the best like case to prefer one value over the other from the standpoint of frontends, and then maybe we can standardize in a mini JEP or just clarify what is the preferred value in the documentation. So yeah, any comments or thoughts on these topics related to messaging protocol? Okay, so I will highlight one pull request, which I think resolves a highly requested feature request. It has 16 upvotes, and that's about adding folding shortcuts. One of the difficulties with folding areas in the code editor is choosing the shortcut, and the other is choosing the correct behavior for Notebook, because while in a single editor you might have regions within this editor, you might have subregions, and like basically many editors end up with 6 commands. We on top of that have multiple editors and potentially editors of like representing both code cells and markdown cells in a notebook. So there is some questions about what should be the default, what shortcuts, if any, should we add by default. And unfortunately, like the most popular, as it seems, shortcut, which is used by VS Code, Control-Shift, bracket, that one is used for switching tabs in JupyterLab, so there's a conflict already. And yeah, on the linked pull request, I and Darshan, we go through some of the possibilities for setting shortcuts. I wanted to see if there is any preference, if you could comment on that pull request, like shortcuts which we definitely shouldn't use, shortcuts which seem reasonable. That would all help to move this forward. We don't need to add shortcuts for all of these new commands. We'd probably want to only add some of them, and the rest user can configure, but it would be nice to expose this functionality if we can agree on a shortcut. And then, of course, there's this discussion about should folding all regions follow all regions in the entire notebook. I think someone commented on the linked issue that yes, but yeah, more feedback welcome. And I'm curious if anyone knows how other notebook editors behave around this.
Yeah, I think shortcuts is tough because the more we add, the less options we have, right? So will it be possible to merge the PR maybe without the shortcuts? Or
Yeah, I think it is not blocked on that. I think spending another week or two discussing the shortcuts and seeing if we can figure something out is fine, because like we are not releasing 4.5 next week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's absolutely fine to not add any shortcuts. But I find the composite shortcuts like Control K, Control F pretty neat, because they are not taking up like a single combo. I'm not sure how they are actually called like this. Is it composite? Is it multi-step? I think this could be reasonable.
I don't think we have very many composite shortcuts. We don't have very many multi-chord
Yeah.
shortcuts. Yeah.
That's the name, chords.
Yeah, chord is, yeah. So each thing is a chord. So I would hesitate to introduce them without sort of looking overall at our shortcuts. I am curious if it's also being introduced into menus, which is how I typically use the fold, actually, fold and unfold, just because I can't remember the keyboard shortcuts, or I didn't use it often enough to remember them.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I think we could easily add that to the menu, and it's with single entry, which would expand a larger submenu. I think that's very reasonable.
I'm just giving it a second for any additional conversation there on shortcuts. Okay.
I'll mention one other thing. I noticed, Mike, you make a comment that you would drop the previous and next tab shortcuts. I would highly discourage dropping shortcuts if we don't have any idea of the usage. That's super frustrating, I think, to go back on shortcuts, even though unfortunately it does seem like that conflicts with the VS Code folding shortcuts.
No. I see how my comment can be read this way. What I actually meant is to drop the shortcuts on which I commented. So this is the conflicting ones, fold
Yes.
and unfold,
Okay.
and not the
Yes.
ones that I referenced. Okay, that's
Got
some
it.
bad wording from me.
So you're saying don't use the VS Code shortcuts in the PR because they conflict with.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, so we're aligned then. Yeah.
Though some part of me also doesn't like this Control Shift brackets. Like I always reconfigure it to kind of Control tilt, Control Shift tilt, because it's like one key above the tab for switching tabs. Okay, thank you for the discussion.
Thanks, Mike. I think up next we have Jeremy.
yeah. In the previous call, the Jupyter AI call, we discussed the PR, which adds the common arguments via the described by. And question was, so there is a valid point by Mike about adding static typing, but I wasn't sure if we should try to do it in this PR or in another one. Personally, I don't think I will have a bandwidth to work on that in the coming weeks, but I can, pick it up again later. We can keep it as a draft if people prefer. It's not that urgent, so but I was just wondering like what people thought about this. If it was already,
sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I was just wondering like if it was already in a good enough state, or if people had taken the time to review it, because it's a lot of changes as well. It's probably like the thing we also need to make sure.
So I went through the PR in its entirety, and I think it's in a good enough state. Now I'm a bit torn, so I would like it to be merged as soon as possible so that we don't add new commands which then need to be documented with described by while this PR is sitting and waiting. On the other hand, my thought was, well, if we introduce this static typing and the default, as I suggested in my review, then not merging this PR yet would be better because we would be sure that we don't introduce this described by with empty arguments. But maybe that's not a very strong point because we could just grab the code base to remove them later.
Yeah. You mean we will have to remove them, right?
Yeah.
Afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's fine. I really wanted to work on this yesterday and today, but unfortunately, some events related to a water pipe breaking in Oxford prevented me from attending my normal work schedule. So yeah, it's probably gonna happen only next week. In the meantime, I think we can merge that PR if there are no other comments.
Yeah, or if you feel like pushing to the PR directly, it's no problem for me. If you would like to experiment with this, like in additional commit on top of it, and then
yeah, but
see if it works.
The earliest I can do is next week. Given that
Yeah,
it's
but so it's also fine. Yeah.
Okay.
As usual. Okay, thanks.
I'm really curious. Is this described by? I remember Nick really asking for this a long time ago. Some sort of description of command arguments, which had been a wild west, right? Of like, whatever, you just have to know what to pass in. Is there a thought about pushing this described by, which looks like it's a JSON schema format, into type checking for arguments in the code? So auto-generating some TypeScript definitions so that using the code that we have in TypeScript typings on the args, as well as just this JSON schema description.
I think that would be the best, like the long term, I guess. But
I don't know the easiest way to do this. I mean, it seems like the describe by is nice. I originally thought, oh, we should do TypeScript types, but then you can't get that information out of TypeScript very easily. So maybe it's better the source of truth is this JSON schema thing. But it would be sure nice if that translated back into editor helps and compilation helps by having TypeScript types based on it. And there are projects that generate TypeScript schemas, TypeScript types from JSON schemas. I think GeoJupyter is using it, like in the hackathon that was this morning right before this meeting. We were talking about some of these projects.
So I think it is also possible to use the TypeScript types and then extract them, and that's not difficult. The problem with that is just that you rely on TypeScript compiler API, which is not stable, not as stable as the language itself.
Yeah.
And going this way with JSON schema makes it harder on two fronts. One front is that we need to aggregate, like extract that from the entire code base, which we do for tests in this PR. But then if extensions register additional commands, it would be like harder ask to, because like we could publish add types to override the types generated from by TypeScript itself. I think we could publish additional package to npm under the types organization, which would include these arguments, but then each extension author would need to do something similar, and I don't know if the maintainers of types will be happy for that to to happen on per extension basis. So yeah, there is a bit more to explore of how to actually deliver them to editors, so that when you're using an extension in dev mode in IDE, you can access this.
Yeah, even the described by asking extension authors to add it sounds like a lot, asking for a lot, because it's extra work, and none of the extensions have that so far. So,
and it's not just extra work, but it's not integrated into the normal development process. So if we use TypeScript types, then I think it would be very natural.
yeah,
Extension
probably.
author has very quick iteration feedback on changing a TypeScript type, and whether a TypeScript type is valid, etc. This is sort of separate metadata that have to maintain separate from their code.
We could do both, in the sense that when there is execute on all these commands, which they are called function commands in Lumino Lingua, we could cross-check that with the described by, but that only gives us like kind of additional sanity check on the correctness of the arguments that are in our code base. It doesn't help with invocation of the command when it is being used in an extension or something.
And is this only documenting the execute args? Because we can have args to, is visible and enabled and things like that as well.
I think it also covers, is palette or is launcher. Yeah.
Okay.
There are a couple of them. Yeah, because these arcs, they can actually be specified in the settings when we add the toolbar items.
Mm-hmm. So I love this effort. I think having some guidelines, some guardrails around these args that have always been just, hopefully you are using the right thing. You have to go check the code to check to see if how the args are being interpreted. Like, this is fantastic.
Yeah. I'm hoping that at least the docs are auto-generated, and I'm hoping that at least this will be helpful already to extension authors, even though it's not as good as completion in an IDE, but at least they can search on the page in browser and then find a match very quickly. It's definitely better than opening the JupyterLab code base, right? Doing a full text search.
And as we often find, what's good for human authors also helps the LLM, which I know is one of the motivations here, is more context for LLMs. And so it's great that those sort of two streams of work are aligned.
Okay, cool. Maybe I'll move on with the second item. So I was also looking a little bit into disabling file uploads. It seems to be like a long-standing issue. And currently in JupyterLab, there are a couple of ways where they can use to upload files. There is the toolbar item in the file browser, and then you can also drag and drop files in the file browser. So I looked a little bit into the code, and the upload logic is different places. So the upload button is specified in the file browser widget plugin, if I recall correctly. But then the drag and drop is directly implemented in the file browser, like packaged directly. So to be able to have like this complete control on file uploads, so there are a couple of places where like people administer the JupyterLab deployment and they want to prevent people from uploading files. And currently, it seems a bit difficult to do this because they will have to disable maybe plugins or remove items from the toolbar. So I open a small PR to add a setting to allow or to enable or disable the file upload via drag and drop. But to me, it sounds like it's not enough because it's a setting. So people can just open the setting editor, enable the box again.
But I
So
think,
I was wondering,
aren't there,
yeah, go ahead.
you can have system settings that override user. How are system settings done? I thought you could override any user setting from a system file.
That's what I thought too. I played around with it, but I wasn't sure. So I was wondering, like, have people been able to, provide like a deployment for lab with immutable settings, but not for all settings, just for like a specific set.
Yeah, I'm
So yeah,
almost sure you can provide system defaults, but also system overrides.
These are overrides for defaults. They do not enforce anything.
Okay.
you
So
can
you're
provide
sure there's
an
no
override.
way to do it a
Yeah,
system
there is
override over the user settings?
there is a way to enforce that certain plugins are disabled on the system level.
Mhm.
So that's something that we added recently, like a year ago or so. If you add a lock on a plugin and it is on the system level, then you cannot like enable this plugin or disable this plugin at the lower level. And the same kind of hierarchy is preserved on some of the server settings, but it doesn't affect the front-end settings. Otherwise than the plugin enable disable status.
Yeah.
But that's only
So
the plugin status, not the settings.
Which is fine for example, the file browser has also like upload button, which is a separate plugin, if I recall correctly.
And that's
Or was it for
I think
download?
it's in the main plugin, but it's a toolbar item. So if you want to disable it, you can provide a custom override. I think it's still part of it's still part of the main file browser widget plugin.
It's not a separate plugin inside of the
I don't think
extension.
so.
Okay.
It could be made as a separate plugin, but
There is a plugin related to download or upload. I'm just confused because I don't remember which one is this.
so download is it's a separate plugin if I remember correctly, yeah, but not
Okay.
upload.
I think it was download that exactly the same thing. People wanted to be able to disable it, so we made it a separate plugin.
Yeah, that's right. So currently, an admin can provide overrides the JSON file, hide the upload button, but it's the same. It doesn't prevent the user to go to the things and add it back.
I mean, in general, the answer that we've always given, and is even in this discussion, is you don't want to prevent this at the front end layer. You need to prevent, like, if you really want security, you need to prevent this at the network layer or at the server layer.
That's right.
These
But
are just window dressing, and yes, it helps, but I'm afraid that if it gives you a false sense of security, if the underlying
I think
API can still be called.
you probably need both, but as a user, if you have like this setting disabled, and then you go to the settings editor, you enable it again, and then you try to drag and drop, and then you get some kind of weird error because on a server it gets rejected, then it's also not great. So yeah. So my guess was that, yeah, go ahead.
It might be useful if we were able to annotate settings, like if there was a little message from the admin, like this setting was disabled and will not work. regardless of whether the user can or cannot toggle it back. Just an idea. I'm not sure if it's a good one.
So
Yeah.
maybe there is also a hack. I think I did it already. So you could have some setting in the patch config, and when you start your plugin, you disable. So you remove from the setting registry. You remove the setting. So I don't know how hacky it is. I can try to link something.
Oh, so you mean providing a plugin that would manually go and try to edit the settings
So
registry?
it could be in the plugin itself. So link. So, and you can see on the line 53, if the flag is true, then you remove the setting for the schema, and it won't show up in the setting panel.
Yeah, and I think the transforms already allow to use that using like built-in mechanism. But then we need to make sure that the front end doesn't like understands that this setting might be undefined rather than just false or true. For example, in Jupyter Spell Checker extension, I use transforms. That's always a good example to populate the list of enums for a setting, which is the language, because this information is not available. It's only available in runtime, so I can also link that code. Okay, I thought I would be faster to find it. We'll send it later. Regardless, I think this pull request might actually be useful for accessibility, as in if there's less drag targets, that might be useful if a person has problem with clicking with mouse. Though if it's for file upload specifically, I'm not sure if the yeah, it does actually. The drag target gets activated even if like I was trying to click on the tile in the launcher to start up a notebook kernel, sorry, a notebook or a console. And if I drag this over the file browser, it would show it as a drag target. And if I drop, it doesn't do anything in that case, actually. But I could imagine scenarios where that could be annoying or show an error.
Yeah, this PR is just yeah, it's kind of a small improvement. I think the only risk there is just increasing the number of settings we have for the file browser. Okay. Yeah, thanks for the discussion. I will probably get back to that a bit at some point later. Try to a couple of different things. Maybe I can just move on to the last item, which was about JupyterLab 4.5 release timeline. I was wondering what people thought about releasing JupyterLab 4.5, whether it should be like in maybe after the summer, after a couple of months, if there were like a couple of features you wanted to have there. There's also this scrolling notebook issue that has been, annoying us for a while. Like all of this. Yeah. Otherwise, I have a couple of other ideas for like features. So if we plan to release final, in fall, I think there would be enough time. So I would like to, for example, improve the comment palette so that we have like recent comments at the top. It's a very small thing, but it's super annoying to sometimes work with the comment palette because you have to search for like this comment that you use all the time. Yeah, I think that would be a good feature for 4.5. So yeah, just checking out what people thought about this. And I mean, if you want to work on something, you can always add it to the 4.5 release plan issue. Yeah, that's all for me.
There was a comment on the chat about for Mike said at JupyterCon. I'm not sure if you saw that, Jeremy. Okay.
Could be a good target date.
Yeah, because like it seems like a natural date at this point. When is it? Is it in October or November?
Yeah, actually, I forgot, but open an issue also in the Team Compass. I was wondering also if people here in the group were planning to go or maybe even present something at the JupyterCon. We haven't really talked about it so far, and I think the CFP closes this week, so just a couple of days left.
I understand through the grapevine there's a chance it may get extended, but if it hasn't been extended yet, like no promises or guarantees or anything. But there was a lot of people that said, wait, this week is SciPy, which maybe nobody here is at SciPy, but it's tough to like make the deadline and like wrap up what you're trying to do at SciPy. Is a lot of our audience at SciPy this week.
Yeah,
JupyterCon sounds like a great time to make the announcement, though, of like what's new. Release it live on stage. No, just kidding. Don't do that. Release it beforehand.
I don't know what kind of the format of the conference would be. Like, in some previous editions, there were like different sub projects, just giving a round of updates. I don't know if this is somehow already planned by default, or if people would just have to submit a talk just the regular way, just like any other talk. So that's why I was curious about this in general. I don't know what the plans are for other sub projects.
There is an info email, I think jupytercon@linuxfoundation.org, that you can send questions to. If you have questions, it goes to the organizing committee. Yeah, that's a good question about sub-project updates. I'm not sure what the plan is around that.
So following up on the question of release date, do you have something in mind? Because like I was speaking of JupyterCon both jokingly and seriously. Jokingly because it feels a little bit late, but seriously because it's a very good deadline to set for ourselves. So would you like it to be like, do you think there's features you and anyone else you know is planning to work on which would take longer, or would benefit a lot of people if they were released earlier?
So I think to me it sounds great. Also, like in the summer, it's usually a bit calmer. Like people take some time off, so there is less activity. I think there will be more activity back in September. So if we, have the usual kind of 2 weeks of beta, 2 weeks of RC, it's already 1 month, right? And then we are already almost at the end of October. I think it will go very fast. So I don't think there is a hurry to have this 4.5 release out.
Okay, so maybe let's post a comment that provisionally we will target a week before JupyterCon and
Why
work
not?
backwards from that, and we can always adjust that later, just to build some expectation and encourage people who were holding off with contributing new features to start thinking about that and maybe provide feedback to do otherwise.
Yeah.
I would target at least 2 weeks before from past experience. Because the week before, one, everyone's busy. And it always seems like there's, minor hiccups in a release. So
And the worst case scenario, you go on stage and press the release
yes,
button.
that's
And
also
everyone
happened.
just...
Yes.
So that's the last JupyterCon. It was the JupyterLab 4 release. So it was, going from 3 to 4. I think that was a bit bigger, right, than going from 4.4 to 4.5. But yeah, yes, there are still, of course, issues that may come up.
It sounds like it would be a good exercise to go through the milestone and get a rough outline of what 4.5 it would include. I think the long silence is Rosio's cue. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, we have about like 9 minutes on the call left, so maybe, and there are no more topics on the agenda currently. Maybe I'm not sure if people are interested in going through the milestone right now, or if we want to set that up for some later time. Well, any thoughts around that?
I mean, we can have a brief look, but the milestone itself probably has like dozens of issues. It's probably a lot because they were probably just moved from the previous milestone to the new one.
I think it's
Otherwise, we had
63.
63. Okay.
And yeah, we could filter by issues or pull requests too.
Okay, so, and I can share. I can share my screen really quickly. So let's see. Actually, I forgot to stop recording, so maybe should we do that off the record, or I think that might be best. Okay, so thanks everyone for joining. We'll go off the record and discuss the milestone. Okay.